Okay. So I'm talking into this so the people out there in virtual land can pick this up and hear it. Can y'all all hear me okay? I know it's harder to hear when this air system comes on. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Debbie Dillion. I'm the commercial or consumer horde agent here in Union County, responsible for homeowners, landscapers, and master gardeners. So that keeps me running a lot of times. And it's my pleasure tonight to introduce your speaker, Jason Loseke. He's the owner, operator of Cedar Cove Landscape. It's a full service landscape project company. He has over 30 years experience in projects and 15 years in professional landscape problem solving. He is what I call a true gardener. He's not just a landscaper. He knows his plants. He knows what they are. He knows how to take care of them. So he's going to talk about rain gardens tonight, and he's probably going to talk about some plants that you can use in rain gardens, correct?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Jason then.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
Thanks, guys, for being here. Appreciate you guys for coming out on a windy night. So yeah, I'm Jason Loseke. Weird spelled name. Not pronounced at all how it's spelled, but I've been Waxhaw based company for about 15 years that we've been in business. And like she said, there was about 15, 20 years of mom and dad telling me what to do and neighbors telling me what to do and side projects and stuff like that before I became a professional. But we wanted to talk about, managing stormwater. Last night, there was a little bit of a storm. My yard didn't see much. I don't know about you guys, but we didn't see much. It was just enough to fill my little sort of hodgepodge rain garden that I have. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Rain gardens they're not a beautiful garden. They're not your showpiece in your front yard typically. That's not why we do rain gardens. That's not why we control runoff. It's often used to mitigate, right? To slow down the water, to clean the water. Sometimes it's because it's, whatever, what we want to do or should do versus a trying to beautify our landscape, right? The cool thing about rain gardens and what I deal with every day in, day out with dealing with water coming through people's yards is how do we deal with it? Sometimes it's functional, sometimes it's pretty. Hopefully we can do both. But obviously, when there is, sorry, trying to put this on paper and then put it into words is two different things, right? So we get erosion from the excess water. Sometimes it's just too much. Like it's not an issue. Obviously, these people on the right are not. That's not a constant thing, but you can see the puddle that they dealt with after a serious rain. So how do we deal with both the erosion issue, the flow of water, the movement of water, and then sometimes when it's too much or also not enough, right? It's not there we go. So why do we do what we do with the storm runoff? It helps slow down the water before it goes in. This is I don't want to sit on the concept of why we're doing it, right? But it's to slow it down, it's to clean it, and then it can be simple and very plain. Again, this is holding water before it transfers it downstream. or it can be very elaborate. You know, if we're doing stone walls and all the plantings and the system, as you guys see, the drain here in the middle, that's an overflow drain, right? That has to go down and out somewhere. So there's infrastructure that has to happen with that. So it can be as simple or complicated as we want to make it. I think rain gardens are, I think a lot of people want to do it, but is it the right space to do it? Is it the right site to do it in? The you know, we want water to come down through the through our property, right? It's flowing down through the property, and then sorry, steep slopes aren't going to be very good for that type of for a rain garden. The sorry, excuse me. The rainwater that comes down through our property is, a lot of neighborhoods that I'm working in are, they're built on flat plots that allow, that changes things, the the noise. So are you in a neighborhood or are you in a natural area? I personally back up to woods, so the water is coming down through my lot and it's going off into the woods and in the creeks below me, right? So a lot of what I do is trying to slow that, again, that slowing that water down without impeding it. When you have a steep slope, you're going to see that the water is coming through at such a force that you're not going to be able to slow it down. You're not going to be able to capture it all. And then and what it means is that you're it's hard to explain when we're not out there digging, right? So I'm a shovel type guy versus a presentation type guy. Sorry. So as you guys see, a rain garden is a wide, flat area. It's capturing the water coming down off of the hill. In this case, it also has probably downspouts that have been routed underground and that are coming into it as well. So I want to stress that rainwater, yes, we get it off of our roofs, off of the pavement, and that's a rush of water that we see. Oftentimes the water coming out of the downspout, it's a rush of water, but every inch of ground creates the runoff, right? So if you have a large hill and it's coming down through your property, that hill, not just your roof or the driveway or the sidewalk, but that hill itself is creating a volume of water that we're trying to control. The rain garden itself, just that square area, is creating an amount of water to control. So, yes.
Would you say that the majority of the issues are coming from the spouts versus the natural runoff of the rain?
Right. It's sure. So the question was, where is the majority of water coming from?
Yeah,
Right.
In our property or our homes. I think that the biggest issue is the force from the water coming down the spouts, or is all of it an issue in general.
Right. So the question was about, you know, again, where's that water coming from? Where's the focus of water coming from? And the downspouts is a majority of it, especially when you have 2 or 3 that are lined up, and then your neighbors 2 or 3 are lined up, right? A lot of our properties nowadays, I mean, new neighborhoods are 10 feet apart for the houses. So you've got 2 roofs coming in. Again, 2 or 3 downspouts into one 10-foot strip. And then you also have whatever, let's say, what's coming off of the driveway or the street this side, or maybe it's the backyard coming this way, right? Whichever direction it's coming from. Again, every square foot of ground is creating runoff, not just roofs and sidewalks and driveways. So to answer your question, yes, it's that concentration of water that is the biggest issue, right? It's that my yard is like I'm lucky enough that I'm on sort of the top of the hill, right? So it sort of goes both ways off of my property. I'm lucky in that sense that a lot of these neighborhoods are house after house after house after house, and wherever you are, whether you're number 2 in line or number 10 in line or whatever, the volume of water increases. Those are not going to be places for rain gardens, right? That's an incredible amount of water that's coming into one place, and isn't going to be a place where you're going to stop the water necessarily. Again, can we slow it? Absolutely. But when you're talking about that flood of water coming in, especially during a thunderstorm and whatnot, then we're talking about more erosion control than a rain garden, right? The average is like 1 to 300 foot. You're not going to make a rain garden probably big enough to capture all of the water that you need to capture, or that, not that you need to, but that's coming off of your roof or driveway. I think it's important to say the rule of thumb that you're not going to make one that's too big. You can't make one that's too big, because Mother Nature is going to give us more rain than we've ever seen before in the next storm. And then even a small one is going to do something good. Like I said, in my backyard, I have very small, like, it's like a trickle of water, but that fills every, I don't know, decent rainstorm. This morning it filled for a few hours, and that was it. Very small, but it's going out into nature in my sense. So I'm not saving the planet with my rain garden, if that makes sense, right? At the same time, I like it. I think it's important, and any little bit that we can stop, I think, is better. So typical rain garden is only going to be about 6 inches deep of water. We're talking 6-inch deep water when it's full. So remember that as we go through this, what your base material is, you're going to have a minimum of 2 inches of compost and 2 inches of mulch. So you're talking 10 inches, a foot deep, that we're having to dig and work to excavate when we're constructing it. As we're going to look at in the next couple of slides, you're going to see that there's substrate. That's more of a commercial, like, retention pond type situation. A retention pond isn't what most homeowners are looking for. We're looking for to catch the water as it then seeps and goes on downstream, right? A retention pond is sort of like a government or logistical thing that they have to check the box off to accommodate X number of houses, X number of water gallons, et cetera, et cetera. That's not where we're building, but to the point, when you're building it, You have to go much, much deeper than what you think. Raise of hands, people that were here last weekend or 2 weekends ago for the conference. There was a conference going on, a symposium. Thank you. Awesome. One of the speakers talked a lot about creek beds and this type of thing as well. That's why I asked. So how do you know that like a rain garden is going to work in your area? If we're talking about really like capturing water and letting it seep back into the ground, and draining it away and keeping it from going downhill, then some of these neighborhoods, you know, again, I'm talking about brand new construction that I deal with a lot, is where the builder has scraped everything down to bedrock or worse, and there's not a lot of drainage whatsoever. So the way to know is to dig a hole. Post hole digger works great. Dig a hole about 1 foot deep, sort of a container, right, in the soil. You fill it with water and see what it does. If it's gone in 12 hours, you have fantastic. I would change that instead of excellent. It's fantastic drainage, like unheard of drainage. And luckily, I think that's what my yard has. I'm in the woods, essentially. So my yard is probably made up of 50-year-old stumps up underneath where we are. So the water finds a channel down through that very easily. If you're 24 hours of no standing water, that's like textbook good drainage, textbook. So people that say, oh man, this, it rained yesterday and this water was here. Well, how long was it here? Well, it was gone today. That's really good drainage. You had a downpour, it created a puddle, puddle's gone. That's good drainage. If that puddle stays for a few days, that's a problem, right? So again, 48 hours acceptable. I think a lot of our soils can handle 48 hours, I think, but it's going to depend on your situation specifically. And are there ways to improve that or change that? Yes, but it requires a lot more work. It does matter. Yeah, I think there's a,
Did it say in there?
maybe. Yes, sir. So I had I don't have it, I don't think. Sorry, yeah, I think I had it, but like in my research that I was doing in the last couple of days, what it meant was that I saw various numbers that led to there's no real good answer, right? I saw a lot of numbers that said it was 5%. So if you had 80 square foot, you needed, 800 square foot, you needed 40 square foot of rain garden, right? That's about 5%. 40 square foot is 5% of 800. And then I saw it was 2 to 3 times. So a rain garden of 100 square foot would give you 300 square foot of water coming off, right? So if you have let's say you have a 300 square foot driveway, you would need a 100 square foot rain garden, right? And then I saw another one that said if you had 800 square foot, it was 40 square foot of rain garden. So I didn't find a lot of good information. I think the main thing is that it's going to depend on your soil, right? Is what it amounts to. And again, from what I've seen, no matter what I do, Mother Nature is going to do better. So I could build the best, biggest rain garden on the planet, and I guarantee you North Carolina rain is going to beat me at some point, right? She's going to overflow that. She's going to do better than I could do, no matter what. So yeah, you could. Again, is our goal to achieve capturing all of the gallons? I think that's I think that's a pipe dream, that we're going to capture everything and keep it, you know, and control it and absorb it into our property. I think that's a real, I don't think you're going to win that battle. I really don't.
That's how wide. That's
So it said 1 foot by 1 foot. Yeah, I think a post hole digger, you know, about a foot deep. Again, we're just sort of judging how much that water disappears. In my profession, we go to dig plants and we just dig little plant holes and the hole fills with water, you know, so you just never know. How much rain has there been in the last week, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the you know, moderately dry, right? Dig a hole when it's moderately dry. Fill it with water. That water is going to immediately go away, almost, you know, instantly. Is it all going to go away is the question. So what happens if you, I like dry erase boards, I'm sorry, but if your yard is a bowl and you have constantly wet soil all the time, no matter what, a rain garden isn't going to fix that. Right? You still have a bowl of a yard, you still have a low spot, you have a wetland, not a rain garden. A rain garden is sort of is a slope, right? The water is coming down like this, right? All the time. And what I'm doing is sort of creating a bowl to catch that water. And then when that bowl fills, it overflows. And we want it to. We're, like I said, we're not going to capture all of the water. So when it overfills, we want it to overflow, and we want it to do it in controlled fashion that isn't going to erode and destroy things and make things worse. So that's where this comes in. Okay, so we have water coming in. I love the dry creek. I love the dry creek all day long. The dry creek is it's a beautiful thing. It's a functional thing. It prevents erosion, etc. We have a level that we're sort of using as our guide to see how much water we're going to fill. Most rain gardens, again, this is a bioretention area. This is a commercial type construction, right? This is professionally built construction, neighborhood type retention pond that you would find in your neighborhoods or at the what do you call it? Commercial development down the street, etc. Right? When they're building, you see them building these ponds on the edge of the parking lots, and that's what this is for. And this is great that the state does this. I think we should do more of it. Capturing the water as it comes off, stopping it before it goes into the creek, whatever that is. At least it settles and distributes some of the flow. It slows down some of the flow because that pond fills up before it flows into the creek, right? So it's not just right off of the pavement into the watershed. So most of us are going to have the overflow weir, it's called, or overflow on the edge. In an alternate system would be to create the man-made overflow. Okay, and we're gonna, you know, as you see, that's a pipe. The trick here is that you have to have somewhere for that overflow to go. Again, if your yard is a bowl and there's nowhere for that water to go to, right? Some of the properties that we work on, it's perfectly flat. There's nowhere for the water to go. It's a pool table, you know. So the only place for that water to go is to the gutter, and I'm going underground in order to come back up onto the surface to go into the gutter. It's not an easy situation. So the perfect setup is where there's a little bit of slope. You create the bowl or a dam to collect the water and then letting it go out beyond that, whether it's through the man-made pipe or through the overflow weir. All right, so if your drainage is an issue, that's when you're talking about adding substrate, gravel, sand, etc. When you're doing that, you're talking about digging exponentially more than what we had talked about already. Okay, so for a homeowner, this is pretty extensive. That's a lot of digging. And digging is hard in Union County soil, right? Okay. So as we think about drainage, where the water goes, we have little issues like this. I showed you the erosion before. I think I showed you that property that had the big giant puddle next to their house that was temporary, but every time it rained, right? This happens often. So what do you do about it? We've started doing, we work with a guy that actually lifts concrete. So we started working with a guy that lifts concrete, and this would be a good situation for that. You lift that concrete about 4 inches, not even that much probably, and all that water sheds off, right? If I didn't do that, I'm having to carve out that dirt and take all that dirt away downhill so that this water can go, you know, this is just a dam. That's all that is, right? The lawn has created a dam. The sidewalk is sunk a little bit, whatever. But regrading that whole lawn, that's machinery, that's man hours, et cetera, et cetera. You can also put in a drain box and a pipe and a trench and run that out. That drain and box and pipe can all go to a rain garden down at a corner of the property. I don't know that you'd want to build a rain garden right here next to your front sidewalk, but that's also an option to dig down and allow that depression where that water goes in, and then again it flows out on the other side. Ma'am. Sure, yeah, right. So the question was using, yeah, well, using plants to absorb the water. I think that's good to a point. I think it's a very small point. I don't think plants are going to absorb the amount of water that you need as fast as you need it to absorb. So yes, plantings. I think more importantly, allowing that water in and to flow downhill. However, fast or slow is important. I want it to do it slowly, but the trick is to get it off the sidewalk, right? And that lawn has created a dam and whatnot to prevent the water from coming off. We see a lot of drainage work it's because of this, you know, like everybody has good intentions and then they crush a pipe when they backfill it or a machine backfills it or whatever. And you end up with a brand new system that doesn't work. So the key things for a rain garden, for drainage, for anything, it's all downhill. Everything has to go downhill. The water doesn't go uphill. And when it does go uphill ever so slightly, it's going to deposit sediment, and that's going to clog the line and clog the system. So the whole thing, dry creek, rain garden, drain pipes, it's all about going downhill and having flow come out of it. So I get a lot of, everybody wants a French drain. Will you install a French drain? I need a French drain. My neighbor told me I want a French drain. Well, a French drain is specific. A French drain allows water in and allows water out. It's made of holes. It allows roots and sediment and all those things into it. But its focus is to take water in and take water out, or let water absorb out. So many of our drains that we install, that is not a French drain. And I'm going to show you other drains, but that is not a French drain. That's just a drain. That's just a pipe, right? That's like a gutter or a sewer or whatever, the street that takes the water from Waterbell Lane in Waxhaw out to the Catawba River, right? And that's a drain. That's not a French drain in any way, shape, or form. A French drain takes water in and lets it out. Both have to have an outflow. The French drain still has to have an out because you're going to give the ground too much that it wants, right? Our rooftop, our sidewalks, it's going to pump way too much water into that ground, into that space. No matter how big I build it, we're going to overwhelm it. So it has to have an outflow too. If you don't have an outflow, you're going to sort of, if you're lucky, you're not going to create a swamp. You're going to create, you have good drainage, that 12-hour drainage I talked about, right? That's going to allow the water down and out. A lot of our neighborhoods do not have that. So you need an out for in my opinion, my professional opinion. I want you to have the ability to absorb as much as you can, but then when it's overwhelmed, it has a way to get out, because otherwise it's flooding whatever. It's flooding basements, it's flooding your yard, it's just a mess. And maybe it'll go away in a few days. It will go away in a few days when that water dissipates. But you're not talking about 12 hours or 48 hours. You might be talking about a lot more. So again, having the outflow allows it to do what it's doing. So this is French drain, right? This is a man-made product. This is styrofoam around a pipe. The pipe is full of holes. It's taking all of the water, the surface water, the groundwater. Surface water is very fast. Rain hits it, it flows out. You see the stream in your yard and it's gone after the rain stops. That's surface water. Groundwater is that stuff that's left behind and you're out there walking around and it's like smushy 2 days later. That's more like groundwater, right? That's more like what's left over. This is accepting all of it except for that stuff on the surface. I can't accept it very fast. It has to absorb in, it has to sink in. So again, this is a downspout into a catch basin. This is a catch basin. That's a vocabulary word for drainage, right? This is another basin to hold a barrel to hold water, surrounded by gravel, full of holes, allows water in and out, and then again an out. There's an out. That's a system we installed. This is the styrofoam filled stuff. We put gravel around it. Big fancy trench, very expensive. This yard has gone under many transformations since then. They just installed the pool. The pool company destroyed that system. They completely destroyed the entire system, even though they knew that it was there. I told them I was not putting it back. We did not put it back. They put it back. I don't think they did it properly, but we've re-engineered the entire space. But you see what we did, coming off of downspouts. This is downspouts. This is downspouts. There's a basin all the way at the top. There's a basin here, those big barrels that we were talking about. And then it goes out to the street. Similar idea, not so French, right? It's downspouts into drain pipes and they go out. Doesn't have to go into a pipe, it can go into the box. The box can collect surface water and the downspout as well that's coming off. When that downspout hits the ground, that becomes surface water, right? But it's all collecting it. So are you creating your pipe out of solid material, or do you want to create it out of a perforated material that has the gravel or the styrofoam? So let me back up real quick. The styrofoam idea is really an ingenious idea that somebody came up with, because I don't have to lift tons of gravel. I still have to build the same trench. No matter what, I still have to build the same trench that thing goes into. a foot wide, more than a foot wide, more than a foot deep. But a styrofoam thing, that's way lighter, way easier to throw into that, tape it up at the ends, we're done, right? Versus several tons of gravel. Yes, ma'am? That would be perforated. This would be a French drain, right? So the question was it perforated or not? This is a perforated pipe. If you're talking about a French drain, it's got holes in it. And in my opinion, those holes, they're allowing silt or clay to come and go out of it, and sediment and whatnot to settle in there, and also roots. We do everything we can to prevent the roots with landscape fabric, the socks around the pipes. I encourage all of that. I want multiple layers to prevent those roots. And in new construction, you probably have 0 roots. But in old construction or an existing house, you may have lots and lots of oak trees, maples, God forbid, right? You better have a couple layers of fabric between you and the maple roots. And it's probably still not enough, in my opinion. So French drains have a very big tendency to clog. They're going to get filled. They're going to get filled with sediment. They get filled, let's say the crap coming off, junk coming off of the roof, right? The stuff coming off of the roof is the leaves and the asphalt and all of that stuff. You know, it fills the pipes. Let's say 5-10 years down the road, you're probably going to have pipes that are 50% full, give or take. So there again is where that slope comes in. The slope is important for your drainage. If you don't have slope, your pipes are going to fill with stuff you don't want it. They're going to fill with sediment. Whether it's little bits of leaves, we talked about it during the symposium, detritus, right? It's that broken down, it's like little bits of leaves, right? Little bits of sticks and pollen and yada yada that get in there. And over a 5-year, 10-year period, without a doubt, that's going to get filled up. And the only way to clean that out that I know of is to take it out and start again. There's no Roto-Rooter that fixes that. So, talking about drainage real quick, when you put a downspout into that drain, and again you have an outflow, that rush of water from the downspout through the system is going to help clean it out. Again, with good slope. So my French drain, my basin that just catches the stuff coming off of the lawn, etc., is going to be cleaned out by that downspout that's cleaning it out and going downhill. I love to connect my downspouts to this type of system because it helps flush it. Right? Yes, ma'am.
Get in there, and you just clean out all that plug that's in there, so it doesn't get into your pipes.
Right. It's a maintenance issue. It absolutely is. Same as a surface drain. If I have a dry creek bed, I got to keep that clean of the leaves and whatnot that are on it. Yep. It's a maintenance issue, but you can't get into the pipe. You can clean the box. You can clean the gutters, which you need to, period. Whether you have a drainage system or not, you need to keep your gutters clean. But in my opinion, these systems, without proper slope and without a downspout coming into them, will often get clogged very quickly. So what we see is, so for an example, this is off a rain garden topic, and I knew that we were going to go there because this is about managing water. When you have a low spot and it holds water and you put in a basin, which is a box and the grate on top, right? That's what we call a basin. And there's nothing else connected to it. It's just a pipe that goes out to whatever, the neighbor's yard probably, right? There's very little flow, right? There's very little push So anything that goes into that box is going to end up sitting sort of in that pipe very slowly and settling out, much like we want a rain garden to do. We want it to take the sediment and settle it out before the water flows out. That's what's going to happen in the pipe. So your 4-inch pipe, which most of them are, becomes 3-inch, becomes 2-inch, becomes 1-inch, you know, and then it becomes 0 or whatever. So again, the people that call me and they say that they have a drainage problem, and I'm like, is the water gone in a day? You don't have a drainage problem. You're good. Of course, Mother Nature is going to cause a puddle. Like, of course, we're going to have puddles in our yards. That's not a surprise. A puddle isn't a surprise. A lake that sits there for 2, 3, 4 days, that's a problem. So, all right, so we a not so French drain. This is just a drain. This is channeling water from one point to another. Could you make this a French drain? Absolutely, right? Proper fabric around it, right? And I always say, go the high-end fabric, man. That landscape fabric, I hate. Please don't put it underneath my shrubs and my flowers. I hate that. Please don't do that. I love it for drainage. I love it for rock and stone and things like that. But the always go high end with the fabric, because that stuff that's woven, you guys have seen Bermuda, I'm sure, growing right through it like it was nothing. Tree roots will grow through it like it's nothing. Especially when you're buying the low end stuff. And Lowe's has about 4 bins, don't they? I think it's 4. It's like whatever. I don't know what the word is, but it's like low end, medium, you know, and it goes on up. And our professional grade that I get is probably a little bit above that. I don't know, but the more the merrier when it comes to preventing silt and roots into my drainage. Duct tape everything. I use a waterproof tape. It's like electrician's tape. It's about 2 inches wide. It's amazing. It cost me like $20 a roll. It's terrific, but it watertights everything, right? And keeps all the roots and leaks out of it. Okay, so earlier you guys saw the yard that had the big puddle. This is the same yard. Okay, so this is looking the same way. Finished product, pathway. This is the other end. So the drain pipe came all the way. There's 2 downspouts up there, came all the way through here. This is all French drain through here too, to collect the groundwater, the low, the muddy type situation. We did it with rock and gravel so that there wasn't any more mud. So this is all of the above. This is a French drain, downspout drain, and a surface drain as well that mimics a path. So when the rain hits the ground, it flows across the ground and out down into the backyard. And anything that's left over, the downspouts and anything that's sort of soaking wet, goes down into that and finds its way out as well. Dry creek beds. I don't think I'm near good. Who is the guy at the symposium? Yeah, I'm not near as good as he is. I don't charge $200 a foot either. But I'm going more towards keeping my water on the surface when I can, so that I can see it. There's no clogging. If it's clogged, it's some leaves or branches, right? And I get out the blower or the rake. But I'm becoming a much bigger fan of keeping the water on the ground, on top of the ground, instead of burying it in a man-made pipe. Personally, there are certain situations that piping and everything, it makes perfect sense. But when you can keep it on the surface, this whole yard on the left was, you know, this is all a slope coming down into the house. So before we got here, you know, the water was coming down here into the building, into the crawl space. So we created a little bit of a bank, a little bit, caught the water as it comes down the hill, which it's going to do whether it rains heavy or doesn't rain heavy. That water is going to come down that hill, hit the creek, and flow out down the creek. And that's just a typical residential sort of ditch, in a more rural neighborhood. And there was some erosion, so we filled it with stone.
So are you digging down even in the dry creek bed underneath those big rocks?
Yeah. Right. So the question was, am I digging down to prepare for a dry creek bed? And absolutely. Another dry erase moment would be that you want to create a ditch, a swale, or a creek, right? And allow that channel of water to flow. What you don't want to do is fill the ditch with rock. So I don't want to dig down like this and then fill it with rock. That will work like $1 million for about a year, maybe. It'll work. I mean, that'll be sweet. You'll write that guy that check. He will be so happy. You will be thrilled. And in a year, it won't do anything different than what it did before. Because all that rocks, all those crevices that allow the water through, will fill with silt and detritus and everything else. Yep. So we want to create the swale, just like Millbridge, Lawson. I'm just quoting Waxhaw neighborhoods that have been built with houses 10 foot apart, and every single one of them has a little V between them. And then behind each house, behind the whole row of houses on each street, there's that V that allows that water to come down through between each house, all of the driveways, all of the downspouts. And the guy at the bottom of the hill has a river that's 4 foot wide, 1.5 foot deep, and there's no amount of stone I can put on the ground that's going to stop that. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, right. You need to go to, so the question was, where do we get materials like this? The material yard is what we call it. That's a generic name for it. Site One, Visions Landscape is in Union County. Who else, guys? McCullen is great. You can get it like Super Sod had pallets of stone sitting outside. I think your what you're going to pay is going to change by those places. But I go to Site One across the board for pretty much everything. Visions is great as well for stuff. McCullen is in Monroe. Really good. They're really good for like raw materials. If you want a bunch of gravel, dirt, sand, things like that, they're mulch. They're terrific for that. For pretty rocks, I really like Site One personally. Yep. River rock is going to cost you. It's a lot more expensive for river rock. It doesn't come from around here. This is called Cane Creek. It's not from Cane Creek in Union County. It's from Cane Creek in like Tennessee or something like that. And this is, I think this is more Pennsylvania stone, I believe. I think that's a mix, to be honest. But Pennsylvania Delaware stone is more gray. It's a very pretty stone. It's a gray mix. So it has burgundies and blues and gray and brown in it. Tennessee is more brown, tan. Doesn't really matter what you pick. It's a preference, right? It's your garden. But and price wise, you end up paying, I think it's, I'm not certain, don't quote me, but I believe it's relatively similar square foot per pound. You're paying about the same, because a bigger stone is going to weigh more, but it's going to cover a lot bigger area, right? Versus gravel, a lot smaller stone, doesn't weigh as much, doesn't cover as much area. So one of the things at the symposium I'm really trying to take heart, and I I hadn't used it in the past. I've started to use it. I had played with it a little bit, but 3-4 different sizes of stone really make a creek look really natural. Bigger stones on the outside, bigger the boulders at the turns, and then you see I use boulders in the middle sometimes to help slow, or maybe even be like a stepping stone across. But it's a slowing mechanism, just like you would see in a real creek in nature. Multiple size stones, bigger on the edges, smaller in the middle, and try not to do this thing where I line them up. Try not to do that. It's tough. I want to do it. My guys want to do it. It's tough not to do it. I think groups is the way to think of it instead of lines. I keep telling my guys, like, it's a group of stones. It's not a line of stones. It's a group. So it can be here, it can be there, whatever, but not soldiers, right? I love dry creeks. Okay, that's it. Very exciting. Questions? Yeah, so the name of the fabric and the tape that I use, I don't know the name of it. Pipe tape is what it's called. And I get it from Site One. It's 2 inches wide. It's just like electrician's tape. It's waterproof. So you can do it wet or dry, like we can do it in the mud. You know, when I'm in, one of the worst things I do all day, any day, is working below where my feet are. So when you're in a trench, your feet are up here and the work is below your feet. That is one of the hardest things to do. I do not understand why. But getting tape around that thing in the mud is very interesting to do. And that tape works great. You're not going to find that at Lowe's, I don't think. You're going to find it at a hardware store or a real materials store. The fabric, I get it from the pro guys. They'll sell retail. They all sell retail too. It's not just, you don't have to be a contractor to do it. But the quality, the tightness of the weave of the fabric is important, I think, when you're talking about landscape fabric. And you'll see it if you go to Lowe's. You bought it. I'm sure I bought it. And you open it up and you can see through it. It's like daylight through it. You can almost like put your hand through it, kind of thing. Like it's very flexible and flimsy. That is not the stuff you want. You want stuff that's not going to degrade. But I definitely want it to be landscape fabric and not some sort of plastic. Or I've seen, oh my gosh, we fixed projects. They planted plants and they used roofing underlayment, which is waterproof, right? And all the plants drowned. Why? Because they couldn't breathe. Nothing could breathe. Nothing could evaporate. It was like they cut an X in roofing fabric and they stuck the trees in, and all the trees died. And they were just rotten. It was all just sloppy mess. So I definitely want landscape fabric that can breathe and allow water to go through or not go through, but it prevents silt and roots. So functionally, when I'm doing a trench, I'm going to dig my trench. The pipe, if I'm using a pipe, has to be 4 inches below the surface. Why? Because of aerators. The aerator comes through, and ideally they get a 4-inch plug. They're almost never going to get that, but we want them to get a 4-inch plug out of my lawn. I don't want them punching a bunch of holes in my drain, right? So my drain has to be, the top of my pipe has to be 4 inches below the surface. That makes that's 4 inches. My pipe is 4 inches, and I need some space underneath it for gravel or sand or whatever. So you're talking a 10, 12-inch deep trench at minimum for just a pipe to go through it, okay? And that's to prevent anything from the surface getting in the way and also allow that material around it. When I dig the trench, I'm lining that with the fabric. I'm filling it with gravel. I prefer sand, to be honest. Sand, I think, works better. We're working with a company out of Monroe. You guys need to write this down. AWD, American Wick Drain. American Wick Drain is it. They make wick drains. So they started with the product that goes on your basement wall, and it allows the water to come down the hill and hit your basement wall, and it goes through the holes, but it's solid on this side, and it goes down and it goes into a pipe along the basement foundation and out to the creek, right? They have now developed it to be used in. They use it in pretty much every turf field. They're on the Masters putting greens, on the greens at the Masters Golf Club. And it's designed. It's installed a few inches underground. It's lined with sand, and it allows it just allows a lot more water transfer in general. So to get rid of that sort of wet dirt that we have, that wet soil that we have sometimes, it's a French drain, right? Like we talked about, full of holes, allows an immense amount of water in, has to have a place to go, has to have the out. But and it comes like it's already pre-wrapped in a felt. Anyway, it's a great product. So that's a French drain product. I got off track. Did I answer your question? Yes, ma'am.
I have that in yard, in the rural areas, and the woods around, but my property is. And I put it into someone else's wooded area or into leach field,
Yeah.
so it's
Mm-hmm.
and pointless. I really, there is not much of a slope, it's just a low area.
Right.
They fill the area, then it's gonna run back close.
Yeah. So question was about it's a low spot, collects the water that sits for a while, and then so what do we do with it? So is that a place for a rain garden? Maybe, maybe not. It's already sort of a low spot. Does it have somewhere to go after that? In which case I could catch it, let it sit, and then let it go on. Or does it maybe need to be filled, perhaps with sand or soil, to allow the water to sort of shed off of it instead of sit into the bowl? I mean, it's sort of a, I don't, without seeing it, I can't answer definitively, but I feel like it's probably more fill it and let it go off.
Because if the soil beyond it, I, that's pretty good guess.
Yeah.
But
If there's an area for it to go off of afterwards, I do like the idea of maybe the rain garden there. Plants are not going to absorb a ton of water any faster than like Mother Nature's going to evaporate it and whatnot. I didn't do a plant list because there's 150 different plant lists for rain gardens, right? Yeah. So I love my shady garden. I love my shady garden. I love my dappled sunlight. I can grow hydrangeas. I can grow Lenten roses all day long. I can do whatever, ferns. I can grow Elysium. These are all great plants that I'm listing for Elysium, also known as anise or anise. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of them that are out now that are bright yellow, which I love in my shady garden because it's that bright color. The guy at the symposium talked about it. One of the guys did. I think it was Jay. Florida Sunshine Elysium is one of my favorite plants right now. Florida Sunshine Elysium, Illicium. Elysium. Bright color foliage, year-round evergreen, loves the water, came from the swamp in Florida. There's another variety, parviflorum, I think it's called, is a big sort of privacy shrub, will get very large, evergreen. It's a solid green, light green color. These are a more what do you call it, newer engineered variety that are smaller, 5-foot size, bright yellow. Banana appeal is another one. I like Florida Sunshine personally. Beautiful plants. I love my hydrangeas around my rain garden in my low areas. They don't need near as much water. Viburnum are a great plant. For the shade, I love my ferns, Elysium. Viburnums can do well in the partial shade. There's a couple of Japanese, Chinese varieties, and then there's the native ones. Native ones are deciduous and have more flowers. The Chinese varieties are evergreen and smaller flowers. In the sunny side, I really love my blueberries and sweet spires and iris and black-eyed Susan. I think those are standard. You're going to see black-eyed Susan on every single rain garden list there ever was because it practically grows in every zone. But black-eyed Susans is awesome. Great ground cover. A lot of what I read talked about rain gardens being okay. So this is an issue I find a lot of people run into is the mulch washing away. A rain garden is kind of supposed to be the mulch floats and then it goes back down. It's really not supposed to wash away. If you have water rushing, we need to be talking more like Dry Creek with maybe a rain garden off to the side type of thing. But the flow of the water is not going to be stopped and your mulch is going to go with it. So a rain garden really is kind of like, yes, mulch floats sometimes, but it sinks back down and goes back down with the water and it sits where it was. You got to sometimes clean out the overflow. But and in my rain garden, it's like leaves for what, the 3 months of the fall. It's like leaf mulch, and then the rest of the year it's maybe no mulch. You know, and I don't sweat it too much. My garden's very, very humble. You know, and I think that's what a rain garden should be, to be honest. I don't, you know, there's plenty of pictures online, I mean, about beautiful, beautiful gardens. I just think those are beautiful gardens. It has nothing to do with if it's a little depression that allows the water to come in and settle before it goes off into the world. Great. That's terrific. That's exactly what we want it to do. But it doesn't have to be a hole in the ground, right? That has water for what, 2 days of the week and then doesn't, and then it's ugly the rest of the time. I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. So I got my blueberries and my Lenten roses on my rain garden, and everybody's happy. The birds are happy. The bird feeder's right there. You know, everybody's thrilled with the rain garden, and it collects a big old puddle of water, and 12 hours later it's gone. So I don't know what I did, but I did something right. I bought the right property. That's what I did. I bought the right. Yeah. Location. I got the right woods. So, other questions? Wow. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No, but if you had a big area, Yeah, if you had a big area and you could sort of dam it up, I mean, that's all a rain garden is, right? It's essentially a dam. You're building a pond, maybe a one-sided pond, right? A pond is sort of circular, and it's made to be sort of waterproof to hold the water. Well, we're one-sided to catch the water coming down, and then not waterproof so that it absorbs and goes away. However it goes away is up to Mother Nature. But I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great concept. The engineering of it would have to be pretty big, probably, to replenish a well. So, just to go way back, when I was in like 6th grade, I did a science fair project about taking water and cleaning it just by running it through sand and charcoal and gravel, right? And you took muddy water and I poured it in basically like an upside down milk jug, and it went into another milk jug, and it just had charcoal and sand and gravel and everything else, and that water came out crystal clear. I didn't drink it, but that water went from muddy water to not muddy water in the 6th grade science fair project, and that kind of like, I don't know, that's maybe the foundation of where I am now, but one of the things. So the groundwater, like water, you know, the water going through the ground it's gonna clean it. It's gonna clean it of particulates. It's gonna clean it of chemicals, bacteria. It cleans it of everything. So, anything else? Drainage or water? Right on. Man.
This guy's very personable. He'll tell you that, he's honest. He's a good guy.
Tell you when you're wrong.
Yes. So what is it you put in at my house? Drainage line.
I don't know. Yeah, we did.
redug up that street.
Under a 100-year-old brick patio.
And it worked. So next month, our speaker is one of our own master gardeners, Christina Culp, who's standing in the back.
Yay.
She's gonna be talking about her top 20 or 22 native plants. Yeah. She can't pick just.
Is Black-Eyed Susan one of them? Yeah. It's a great plant. Yeah, it's a great plant.
They multiply very easily.
Right.
So we appreciate y'all coming out tonight.